Hi, it's Eric Daly of the Multnomah Group, and here's what you need to know if you're a retirement plan sponsor for the week ended Friday, June the 6th of 2025. This week, I wrote and released a blog post on private equity in defined contribution plans, largely for the purpose of plan fiduciaries to help them better understand the pressure that may be coming ultimately from the Department of Labor and certainly be coming from other investment professionals to include private equity and retirement plan investment menus for defined contribution plans. The effort was to explain really the levers that create return in private equity. And I will argue there are three. The first of which is that ultimately in private equity firms take a much more active role in the management of the business. So if you presume that private equity can manage an operating business better than the existing operators, then ultimately that could create value for shareholders. The second typically is financial engineering. And by financial engineering, in many cases, that means causing the operating business to take on more debt as a way to create leverage for growth. Uh, that ultimately, as in any investment vehicle, if you add leverage to it, would increase the potential upside return. The third of which is the what we call the liquidity premium. Anytime you would buy an organization, a security, and you're not able to redeem that at present market value, you should expect and demand a higher rate of return. No different than buying a 10-year CD versus putting money in a short-term investment. If you're going to tie your money up that long, you want to at least get the return to be higher than the immediate return for a liquid investment. The challenge in defined contribution plans is really threefold. They match really the same ultimate levers that you can get out of private equity. The first of which being that the cost of private equity active management is high. Frequently 2% for active private equity managers. That 2% is a reduction in the ultimate return to shareholders. And again, there's no guarantee that new non operators from outside are going to be able to manage the business more effectively than the current folks that are incented to do so. The second, leverage, ultimately, you can get leverage other places. You don't have to pay 2% to get leverage. If you wanted to buy a levered ETF, you could do that and get, again, the upside return. And of course, the challenge with leverage, it's not a free ride. If you accept leverage in your investment portfolio, you also accept leverage on the downside, meaning that if things don't go well, the additional debt that you've taken on within your portfolio, the leverage tends to reduce returns and increase the volume of downside exposure. The third of which is liquidity. Defined contribution plans have typically demanded liquidity. So any liquidity premium you may receive is going to come with significant constraints. So typically, to get a product into a plan that has limitations on liquidity, what ends up happening is you engineer a product that uses cash to try and create like a liquidity buffer. And that liquidity buffer actually ends up reducing returns. You're not getting returns on whatever the value of that cash buffer is. And again, that creates kind of a downside phenomena for an investment vehicle when you're expecting that return to be a material component of your expected return. So why do endowments and foundations, why do pension funds use private equity? Because they can actually capture the liquidity premium. In a defined contribution plan, I think it's much, much more challenging to do so. So I think there's going to be, again, a lot of pressure. This is a new product, and anytime you have a new exposure, you've got folks who want to push it, so it makes them, it gives them the opportunity to be perceived as being expert or innovative. But I think when you look at private equity and how it executes, it's difficult to find an avenue through which it's going to create any material value for defined contribution plans, 401ks, 403bs, and 457bs.